Hey, everyone, and welcome back to Pro AV. Today, I am your host, Ben Thomas. One of the things that we've seen in AV and really across technology over the last few years is a shift to cloud and web-based workflows first. But one of the challenges with that has actually been that a lot of companies and AV companies and technology companies, really companies even outside of that market altogether, have been really ill-equipped to accommodate that. And one of the challenges that we've seen is companies now are having to outsource and bring in remote labor at really a higher pace than they ever have before. And, wanted to talk about that today specifically. Brought on an expert in the field, Lach de Crespigny from Revelo. Lach, it's wonderful to have you on the show. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, Ben, thanks so much for having me.
Lach, I kind of mentioned it briefly in the introduction there, but, especially here in the States, there's kind of a hiring crisis. And especially as we dig into the web first and the digital first approaches that are a little bit more challenging to hire for, there's just been this massive roadblock trying to bring some of that talent on. And it seems like really the remote workforces and the outsourced workforces are more popular than ever. Is that really the case?
Yeah, I think very specifically the remote workforces, software engineering, remote workforces especially has gone from less than 20% of companies offering to now being the standard. Over 80% of companies are now hiring software engineers remote. And as you point out, it's because the talent crunch is so large in the United States that during COVID, when software engineers went remote and they preferred it, companies that wanted to improve their hiring, hire better, offer more to their employees, decided they could keep it remote. Productivity went up. And it's a way for them to access more talent around the globe. So it's really been actually a great way for them to unlock the potential of their companies, is to be able to hire more because they're now running a software engineering remote.
Well, especially in the AV markets, like I mentioned too, we've kind of shifted to this cloud first, remote first production standards. And in a lot of cases, we went from 0 to 100 on remote workflows as far as broadcasting and technology. And we were pretty ill-equipped for that transition collectively as a technology industry, kind of ironically enough. How did you see people really respond kind of in the immediate short term whenever COVID hit and they really had to extract some of those remote resources?
Yeah, look, I think that's a similar story across the whole world. I think everybody remembers the lockdown, and we all went from in-person to remote, but often in a single day. If you'd told me beforehand that was going to happen, I would have said it couldn't be done. But the fact we were all forced to do it is the only reason it happened. And it's the only reason we had 10 years of progress happen so fast in terms of working habits. Look, if I think back to that time, there was definitely 3 to 6 months where no one wanted to hire anyone. There were a lot of layoffs happening. Nobody knew what was going on. Nobody understood the virus. And everything just kind of froze for 3 to 6 months. But what happened was then after 6 months, when they turned back to their hiring plans, a lot of teams working with software engineers said, well, hold on, the team's going well. It's 6 months we've been working like this. Everyone's productive. We're doing better. Why don't we just keep hiring remote? And so that was really the group of situations that joined to make this shift so seismic and so quick.
Well, you talked about kind of the globalization initiatives really of hiring, and that's something that I feel like in a post-pandemic world, we've kind of removed the stigma in a lot of ways from an international workforce. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we saw, and it's been fascinating to see this very similar thought process in all of our clients, is people started then hiring remote after about 6 months of the pandemic, and very quickly realized, hold on, if everyone's remote, as long as you speak good English, you're technically strong, and you work in my time zone, well, I don't really care if you're living in San Francisco, Austin, Texas, Mexico City, or Sao Paulo, Brazil. And so we had a flood of American companies who, for the first time ever, started hiring remote. And what they were looking for was exactly the same thing that they used to look for in an in-person employee. They just said, okay, well, why don't I expand my talent pool to the 600 million people in Latin America, get better engineers, often for a competitive price, and I'll be able to accelerate the progress of my company. So I think one of the things you mentioned earlier, you mentioned the stigma of outsourcing. I think the biggest shift I've seen in the industry over this past year was when you thought about using developers in, say, Latin America 2 to 3 years ago, you would use them because you were either going to outsource your software development or you were looking for cheap labor. The difference now is most American companies doing it are just saying, look, I want the best engineers and I don't care where they live. And so it's not about outsourcing and it's not about finding cheap labor. It's purely about how can I look at more people to find the best candidates and the best employees for my team.
Well, and naturally, Lach, the next question is how do you find those people? And that's something that you've seen firsthand, especially over with the Revelo team. You know, what are some of the ways that you guys not only are enabling that, but seeing some of those, the demand for remote workforce and hiring? How are you seeing people utilize those tools?
Yeah, and so to be clear, this is what we do. This is what Revelo's always done: is find the right candidate, match it with the right company. And now, because all the roles are remote, we do that exclusively for remote positions. The way Revelo has an inbuilt advantage compared to every other player in the industry, which is we actually own the largest talent marketplaces in Latin America. And so we're able to we've got access to more candidates faster, of better quality than anybody else. And our machines have been training for years on identifying the characteristics that bring the best candidates and match the best candidates to the right company at any one time. I think the way I think about it is, I'm sure someone from Texas is better at recruiting through Texas than someone from San Francisco might be. They know the universities, they know the right companies, they know the places to go to find the best candidates. We're really, really deep in each country in Latin America, and our machines and our algorithms and our technology has been working on all of those problems for years and years. So it's very, very easy for us to match that correctly with the American clients that have been flooding into our platform.
You know, you bring up a really interesting point, and one that probably not a lot of people realize is a challenge with a remote or international workforce is the time zone difference. You know, whenever you're working with international teams, a lot of times there's this natural assumption, oh, if I'm in the US, I'm going to be working with somebody overseas, you know, in Europe, things like that. But, you know, one of the things that you guys are unlocking is this idea that, hey, we're just expanding to the south a little bit more, but we've got people that are available for the normal full workday. You mentioned I'm here in Texas. You know, Central Time Zone is something that, you know, goes down south too. So it's not always got to be you know, where we're bringing somebody in Texas or bringing somebody in a specific region. But, you know, talk about some of the ways that you've seen companies really try and adapt to that Latin American workforce.
Yeah, and I think there was a big shift from in the past, maybe companies would outsource to, say, India, and you'd give them something to do at night and you wake up the next morning and maybe it wasn't quite what you were looking for. It'd take another day to turn around. That's not what companies are looking for when they're working with a company like Revelo. When they're working with Revelo, what they're looking for is somebody that will work with their team full time, be online the same time as their team, feel like part of their team, have the same benefits as their team. And the time zone obviously is the biggest barrier to that. Very hard to feel like part of a team with somebody that you don't see day to day. So that's what we facilitate. A lot of our California clients are hiring through Mexico. A lot of our New York clients are hiring through Sao Paulo. As you pointed out, our Texas clients hire from all over the continent because it works. That really has become the defining factor of where you can hire. It used to be the city you were based in. Now it is, do they speak your language? Are they in your time zone? That's all the companies that we work with. That's what they're looking for, to the point where a lot of the candidates that we've placed, they have work habits that it would be impossible to carry out if you weren't in the same time zone. Like a lot of them have 24 work day open meet rooms, and they're all on video conference for the whole working day together. And they chat just like a team would if they were sitting around the table. Practices like that, very tough to do if you're outside a time zone. And so that bridge between North America and South America, it's a massive, massive tidal wave that is going to just unlock American innovation over the next 3 to 5 years. It's really going to be a massive accelerator on the economy.
Well, Lach, say I'm a company who's decided that I want to invest in a Latin American workforce. What are some of the challenges that I can expect, whether it's
Yeah,
something as simple as currency conversion, laws and regulation changes? What are some of those things that,
yeah,
as a company that's getting into this market for the first time, you'd need to worry about?
yeah. Well, look, that's where Revelo helps out a lot. Unfortunately, Latin America is a very complicated place to do business. A lot of complicated tax codes, a lot of complicated candidate benefits or employee benefits that are very hard to understand. And it's always whenever I talk to Americans, I've lived a lot of my life in America, and I always say Americans underestimate how business friendly America is. It's really such a great place that makes everything easier. Unfortunately, not the case in a lot of Latin American countries. So you are able to do it yourself. You can do it yourself if you want. It'll take some time. It'll be difficult. I'd highly recommend engaging local lawyers or at least some local employees that know what they're doing. And I think the other option, obviously, is to work with a company like Revelo that makes it super simple. For us, we have American entities, we have American employees. They can walk you through the process, and you pay a bill once a month to an American entity. Our goal is to make it as easy for an American company to hire across all of Latin America as it would be for them to hire across any state in the United States.
Well, I love that you said that, because one of the challenges naturally is, as you mentioned, different tax codes, requirements, things like that, and it's not something that you want to take on your own for sure. I'll end with this question too. Lach, what's next for the international and remote markets as far as hiring goes?
I think the first step is definitely going to be a much deeper penetration of software engineers all across the United States economy. So right now, all the venture-backed businesses are doing it. The next step, what we're going to see, is more middle market and more traditional companies that don't see themselves as tech first, but little by little, they're going to start to work out, okay, if I'm going to have technology in my company, this is something I have to do to be able to compete with all the venture-backed startups to get good talent.
Well, Lach, we appreciate your perspective on the subject. It's a great takeaway for our AV community, but all across really the technology communities and even a lot of the remote workforce communities in North America. We appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks so much, Ben. Appreciate it.
And thank you for tuning in. Join us next time for Pro AV Today.